What is the most prudent way to handle the likely rise of China? I'd argue there are two radically different alternatives, and our biggest problem is that for natural political reasons, policymakers don't want to choose between them. One would be to accommodate the rise of China, recognize it as a potential superpower with the natural aspirations, the same prerogatives that we have. The other would be to contain China and forthrightly set out a strategy and set of alliance relationships to prevent China's rise from going in directions we don't like. But so far, we've naturally wanted to have it both ways. That's the default option in politics. But the longer that there's no choice between those basic alternatives, the more dangerous I think the possibilities of unanticipated confrontation and escalation become.
Do we have sufficient information to make that choice?
This is a good question.
Yeah, but we don't want to create a self-fulfilling prophecy where we push the Chinese into actually being more of a peer competitor or enemy than they actually are.
We have no choice but to create a self-fulfilling
Dick gets this right because you have a problem when you have two explanations that are perfectly rational, containment or engagement, and Washington chooses neither. They call it congagement. When you're creating words, you have a problem, and that's what Washington's doing right now.
Even if the United States opts for containment, which I think is going to be the likely response in the direction we're already heading, containment of China is not going to be easy, assuming it continues to develop economically, in part because the alliances we're going to have to rely upon in Asia are not easy alliances to maintain.
Right.
They're geographically very separate from one another. They often don't get along particularly well with each other. So this is the one place where if you believe balancing China is going to be important, where the United States may in fact have to play a more active role than in any other part of the planet going forward.
But things are getting better, actually, not worse. So in this situation, the thing that scares us most, that makes it hard for us to do what we're currently doing with respect to China, is that getting up close and personal with them because of what they call anti-access technologies, the military technology is going in the direction that makes it hard to get next to somebody else's country, right? But that same thing will create a challenge for the Chinese, right? When they try to leave China, they go into the anti-access zone of Japan or even Taiwan or some other country, right? So if the direction of military technology makes it harder for us to project, it also makes it harder for them to project.
Yeah, let me take a different cut at that. If you had a choice between being China in 2050 or the United States in 2050, what would you choose? I'd choose the United States.
Yeah. Sure.
China's
No
got
doubt.
lots and lots of weaknesses and lots of challenges that make our problems seem pale.
And that's why I disagree
in comparison.
And that's why I disagree a little bit with Steve. Is I think that while if we create all of our alliances as a bilateral relationship, it's always the United States and somebody else, then that is hard to manage. But China is going to is already bumping up against a lot of other countries in the region that have very, very strong interests.
Right, and
I sort of agree with John that this is probably a country that's going to need containing, but that doesn't really give you enough to go on. The question is, what does an intelligent containment strategy vis-a-vis China look like? Right? Could a containment strategy be more or less sensitive to the problem of spirals? Right. So should we is it our job to fight everywhere all the time and to carry the full weight? Is that your version of containment? Well, that's where the argument has gone. Is superimpose the Cold on this thing,
let's be careful
and connect every commitment to every other. And it seems to me that we need to think through what a more intelligent containment strategy would look like than that.
Right, but we have to be careful about our confidence in our predictions. I mean, look at how badly we did during the Cold War. So we should think about all the ways in which China actually could bump up against a ceiling here and therefore won't be as big a problem as we expect. And therefore we shouldn't build a security architecture around a problem that we aren't even sure is going to be a problem.
But you know what the fundamental problem in your argument is? That over the long term, China gets more powerful relative to us. That means we have a vested interest now in drawing lines in the water when we're really powerful. So if we wait and wait and wait in the hopes that things may improve, what's happening is the balance of power is shifting in their favor, and it's going to be hard to draw lines.
Right, but that's the same argument that got us into places like Iraq. It's a preventive war logic.
No. Iraq was a crazy war because we had no vital interest involved there.
Right.
This is a case where there's a vital strategic interest involved. We want to prevent a potential peer competitor in East Asia, the same way we want to prevent the Soviet Union from dominating Eurasia. This is not Iraq.